Will the Patriots be buyers or sellers or neither ahead of the trade deadline? I'm Mariah Janos, joined by Evan Lazar. Evan, at this point, do you think the Patriots should invest in this team, whether they trade a draft pick for a receiver or a tight end or some other position?
I think the question is who is that player and how long is he under contract for? If we're talking about a rental situation where the Patriots are signing a Mohamed Sanu, who's basically on a one-year deal at that point. He can get cut for nothing the next season, and they're just looking to add to this roster to make this team better. I think the answer to that is no. I would not do that. Now, if they want to go ahead and trade, a draft pick for an Evan Ingram who's under contract for 2 or 3 more years, or someone like that, and that's a different story because now you're upgrading the team in the short term and the long term. So I think that the days, at least for now, of sending a second-round pick for a player like Sanu, who's literally coming here just to make the 2020 Patriots better, are kind of gone, with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay right now is what I would say. I wouldn't invest in the team in that way. If you want to invest in the team with a kind of an eye towards the future as well, then maybe I could entertain that a little bit more.
Now, if they're not going to invest, do they sell, whether it be Stephon Gilmore or Joe Thuney or someone else?
This might be a cop-out answer, but I think it also depends on the return for those guys, right? With a guy like Thuney or Gilmore even, but I think more with Thuney, he's a franchise tag player, which means he's a free agent at the end of the year. So any team that acquires him is acquiring him for 8 games, and then you have to pay him a hefty contract, $14-15 million a year to keep him around. So it's kind of the same situation with Dallas and Amari Cooper. They traded a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, then they had to give Amari Cooper the bag. So when you have to do both of those things, do you want to do that if you're a team for a left guard? He's not a left tackle. He's not a premium position player. So that to me kind of suggests that the Patriots probably aren't going to do better than the comp pick that they would just get back by letting Joe Thuney walk in free agency next offseason, which is going to be a high comp pick in the 3rd round. So end of the 3rd round still, but on the higher end of the comp pick formula. So if that's going to be the case, then you have to get a 1st or a 2nd round pick for Thuney. And I just don't know if teams are going to offer that up for 8 games. And the second one with Gilmore, he's under contract next year. His base salary is actually only $7 million. So he's pretty affordable next year for his new team. His whole cap hit doesn't transfer over because the Patriots are going to have to pay some of that salary. So I could see a team parting with a pick for Stephon Gilmore, but it still comes back to the return argument of, you're probably not going to get a 1st round pick for a 30-year-old cornerback, as good as Gilmore is. So you're probably talking in that 2nd and 3rd pick range. So the question really is that worth it to you to trade your best player for a 3rd round pick? I think that a lot of people would argue no. So that's the kind of conundrum the Patriots are in, is that I don't know if Joe Thuney and Stephon Gilmore have a ton of trade value, quite frankly. And that's something that might sound hard to believe for Patriots fans because those are 2 of the best players on the team, but from a contractual standpoint, from an age standpoint, in Gilmore's case, that's just not a player that usually nets a huge return. So then you have to kind of, weigh the okay return versus losing a really good player. And I always tend to lean on the side of keeping the player.
So with all that being said, do you see the Patriots just doing nothing and making do with what they've got for the rest of the season?
That's exactly what I see them doing, honestly, Mariah. And the biggest thing to me, and this is kind of a whole separate video, but I would just embrace the youth movement at this point and let all these rookies and the 2nd-year guys and even the 3rd-year guys that haven't gotten a ton of opportunity give us a chance to see what they have so that we can evaluate these players the rest of the season. If you don't let a guy like a Devin Asiasi or a Dalton Keene loose at this point, then you have no idea if those players are any good, and now you're in the same exact place at tight end as you are this offseason, next offseason, right? So at least we can get an evaluation to look at some of those guys, Uche, Jennings, Asiasi, Keene, Duggar, obviously, and see if they have any sort of playmakers, any sort of things going on there that they might have found somebody in the draft. And if they did, then great. If they didn't, then at least we know going into next offseason that they need to address that position.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. For all of our Patriots coverage, head to clnsmedia.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel over at Patriots Press Pass.